Okay, grab your coffee and take your seat, please. Okay, welcome back. I'd like to take a moment to thank some more of our bronze sponsors. Life Options, Nassau Re Cayman Limited, On Course Cayman, Kids Ability, Appleby, BAF Insurance, Denton's, Foster's, Al Kebab, Healthy Futures, Hughes Janitorial, Hope Academy, RSM Cayman Limited, Seaboard Cayman, and Stepping Stones. Again, this list almost grows every year. We are so grateful for all of our sponsors, not just for the conference, but for all of our services that the Alex Panton Foundation provides. Thank you so much. Next to the stage is Dr. Stephanie Edwards, Educational Psychologist at the Cayman Islands Department of Educational Services, presenting to us on trauma impact on learning and classroom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephanie Edwards to the podium.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that coffee break sufficiently revived you so you can pay attention and learn something today. Really and truly, I'm not going to say anything groundbreaking, but I'm hoping that you can take away even one bit of information that resonates with you. I think I'm off to a winning start. I didn't trip on my way up the stairs. If you know me, you know I'm extremely clumsy, so we're looking good so far. So essentially, these are the objectives for the next 20 or so minutes. I'm going to talk very briefly about what skills are involved with learning. We're going to talk about behavior for learning and relationships for learning, because all of these things intersect to create a sort of good foundation for academic success. So when we talk about learning, obviously the brain is going to be involved in that process. Learning requires a set of skills where we're receiving information from the environment, we're taking in new information. What we do with that information, do we store it? Do we, use only short-term memory, working memory? So many different things involved in a learning process. So sort of the foundation set of skills would be the executive functioning skills. Executive, when you hear executive, okay, as it relates to a company or an organization, that's sort of the head honcho, right? People in charge, that's the executive. So same thing with executive skills, right? We're looking at things like planning, organization, sequencing, how do we monitor our behavior, working memory, among others. Those are very, very important for the learning process. Language. When we think about how we learn, we have to listen to the teacher talking. We give back information through language. It could be verbal, it could be written, but language is very, very, very important to the learning process. Memory, of course. Memory, if you can't remember what you're learning, then you haven't learned it, have you? Cause and effect. If this, then that, right? If I press the gas in the car is gonna go faster, okay. If this, then that. Cause and effect, very important across subject areas. And social skills. Why would students even need social skills? What does that have to do with learning? Well, it has a lot to do with learning. Think about how education is set up. Most often in a traditional setting, students are with peers. They have to interact with peers. They have to interact with the teacher. They have to interact with, whoever is on the school compound. It could be canteen staff. It could be security. All of that is involved in learning. right? So if we have a child who has limited social skills and cannot get along with peers, well, what is that going to look like in a classroom? That could look pretty disastrous. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on. And academic success, finally, is really heavily driven by self-regulation skills. So the ability to regulate behavior, regulate emotions, regulate attention. If I can't manage my feelings in the classroom, I'm not going to be learning anything. If I can't manage my behaviors in the classroom, I'm not going to be learning. Certainly, if I can't manage my attention and regulate my attention, not learning. Or at least my learning is going to be compromised. Okay? So, when we think about where we are at the intersection of trauma and learning, we have to consider, and we've heard this several times today, the brain and the brain's response, and essentially the body's stress response is mediated by neural networks in the brain, right? That's a whole lot of blah blah to say, all right, let's think about it. If you think about somewhere that's like developed, some place cosmopolitan like Miami or Atlanta, and you think of like their highway networks, right? And when things are good, traffic is moving and everything is fine, and lanes and merging, and 7 lanes this way and 7 lanes that way, and everything is fine. But let's have a traffic pileup on one highway, and then the whole system is affected. Everything starts to break down because roads that are meant to manage 100 cars per hour, now we're looking at 1,000 cars per hour, hypothetically. What does that look like? That's chaos. And it's the same thing that is happening in the brain, in a traumatized brain, when the stress response is going and going and going. The highway network is heavily compromised. So when a child has experienced trauma, it could be one singular traumatic event, or chronic trauma over time, or even unpredictable stress, the stress response system, that neural network in the brain that mediates the stress response, gets altered. So essentially, I'm saying it doesn't function in the way that we'd want it to. It's not functioning optimally necessarily. And what we can see in the classroom is what we call state-dependent functioning. So what that looks like is, okay, you have Jacob in class today, and you say, all right, Jacob, can you write these 3 sentences for me? Jacob might groan, but he writes his 3 sentences. Tomorrow, Jacob is in. Jacob, can you write these 3 sentences for me? The book is gone flying one way, the pencil is gone, turning over the desk. I mean, completely different response from the day before. Why is that? Same child, similar task. What's happening? The child's emotional state is different. The child's mental state is different. So the ability to engage with a task or learning is variable in our students with trauma. So when we talk about the brain's response and the body's stress response system, did I go too far ahead? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, when we talk about the stress response and what's causing the fluctuation and the kind of up and down in performance, we have to consider what is happening in the brain. What is it that's happening that's causing this child 1 minute to look like they're engaged and another minute, nope, not engaged at all? Essentially, and this is work from Dr. Bruce Perry, who is, a leader in his field. Essentially, the child's mental state can vary from calm all the way to terror, right? So at any point in the day, and this is any of us really, your mental state can vary. What we like to see in the classroom is when we are having students that are calm and alert, right? They're chill, they can listen, they can answer questions, things are mostly okay. Now, if something is happening inside that child that is triggering the stress response, then we start moving up to the alarm stage. Oh, wait, I'm perceiving a threat, something bad is happening, starting to get a heightened response. By the time we get to fear and terror, learning is not taking place anymore. Based on the theory, once the fight or flight mode is activated, so that's your ultimate stress response, the front of your brain, sort of this cortex here, which is where a lot of learning, higher order, remember I said executive skills, that's where a lot of this happens. That part of the brain is not firing. That part is essentially shut off. Now, that's a simplistic way of putting it, but that part of the brain is no longer what is driving a child's behavior. Essentially, the child is then in survival mode. So judgment, reasoning, thinking, that's not it. I need to survive. Am I going to fight off the threat? Am I going to run away from it? What am I going to do? It's a sort of reflexive response, not thinking through step by step. So in order for a child to learn, they have to feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, then we're going to end up in a big problem in terms of access to education and making sure that they're making gains in the classroom that they should. Now, when a student feels so threatened and they're in that fight or flight or freeze state, and we see here, all right, cortex off, the lower parts of the brain on, the stress chemicals are so high, the anxiety is high, they're not thinking through things in a logical way. So let me see if okay, put it this way. Imagine you're driving, you're on the bypass, you're driving at the speed limit because we do not speed, we don't break the law, right? Fine. It started raining maybe 10 minutes ago. All right, so the road might be a little bit slick, maybe puddles here and there. And I'm going back to the days before we had rumble strips leading up to the roundabouts, right? So no rumble strips, it's just pavement all the way. Fine. You start to brake, right? But you were going at the speed limit, so all right. But you start to apply your brake, and something happens. You start to hydroplane. Maybe you've lost control of the car. Car starts to slide. All right, so your brake's not working. You're trying to remember, wait, what do I do when this happens? Wait. Steer into the direction of the, wait, no, do I steer into the direction of it? No, did I pump the brake? Not brake at all? So much is happening in that moment because I would hazard a guess you're either at fear or terror because you don't know what's happening. You don't want to hit somebody else. You don't want the car to hit the bank, turn over. So many things going through your mind, right? I want you to hold that feeling. Just imagine it. Hold on to it. I'm going to come up to you now and I'm going to say, do this math worksheet. 20 problems, you have 10 minutes. What would you do? I can tell you what I would do. I'd cuss you. True story. You are so stressed. How is it this, you are coming to ask me to do this thing and I'm feeling this way? And that is when we start to see some of what we call externalizing behaviors. So quarreling, arguing, being defiant, all of these things because the child is stressed. It looks like rude behavior, but the child is stressed. And that's something important to keep in mind is that what can often look like just willful defiance and just barefaced, just rudeness is really a trauma response. And in a time when a child is stressed and you're asking them to do something and they cannot access that frontal cortex, that's only going to escalate things. and then we end up in power struggles. Okay? So Jacob is stressed, he's thrown the book, he's thrown the pencil, he's about to throw the chair. What do? Jacob, sit down. Jacob, you're not listening. I'm going to send you to the principal. Well, that's not helpful, right? No, I am not going to stand here and say teaching is easy, because it is an exceptionally difficult task. And I don't want anybody in here who is an educator or who works with students to feel like I am saying this is a walk in the park. No, but I'm saying this is something to be mindful of. And that leads us exactly into the next section, behavior for learning. So children who are traumatized, oftentimes we see a lot of aggression. The aggression can be physical aggression, it can be verbal aggression. We just know aggression from all angles. We know aggression. We know defiance. I'm not doing it, no. Or they'll just look at you, just nope, not happening, sit there doing nothing. But some students, and I think it was mentioned before, it could have been Dr. Davis who mentioned, the one who is quiet, the child who is withdrawn, not saying anything, not giving any trouble, just doing their own thing, trying not to be noticed. Why? If I'm invisible, nobody will notice me, then nobody will hurt me. Right? So I'm just going to be as compliant as possible, do things as perfectly as possible to avoid anybody coming after me. For our aggressive, defiant kids, that's more, I'm going to get you before you get me. I'm not going to give you a chance to get me. We have our kids who are reactive, and they're impulsive, and they don't think before they do things, and everything seems to just trigger them, right? We have these wild shifts in emotions. Literally from minute to minute, you'll have a student who seems to be managing just fine, and then something happens. What's the problem? Miss him, look on me. Well, okay. But what's happening is that that child perceives a threat. That child sees that face and thinks, oh, you want to hurt me? Well, guess what? I'm going to get you before you get me. And it could be any sort of trauma trigger, right? A trauma-related cue. It could be a look. It could be a smell. It could be the way somebody dresses. It could be a time of day. Who knows? And as a teacher, or whoever is working with students, you're not going to know every trigger. That's not a thing. So you might be left bewildered to say, nothing happened. Why is this child behaving like this? Well, child was triggered, we just don't know why. So then what do we do? What do we do when we have students in our class? They're withdrawn, they look like they're not interested, they're numb, they're zoned out, they're not present, or overly compliant. What do? We have our students who are aggressive and defiant, and oh man, that's a hard job. If you have 24, 25 kids in your class and 2 of them are playing up because of one thing, and then you have 3 more over here, it's a lot of work. Again, I'm not trying to oversimplify and say this is a walk in the park, but something to think about. Relationships are central to helping children to regulate themselves. Relationships are central to assisting our students who have traumatized, or they are traumatized and they have these really difficult backgrounds. If you think about it, learning requires a student to trust the teacher, maybe even to trust the peers. Learning requires taking risks. We're not born knowing everything. So if I'm going to learn, it means I'm going to have to try, and maybe I'll fail, and I'll try again, and I'll get feedback, and I'll try again. But if I cannot trust the teacher, or something is happening within me that I feel like I can't trust the teacher, then I'm not going to engage with learning. So what am I going to do instead? Miss, I'm not staying in this class, and I'm gone. Not going to classes. That was mentioned before. I'll just walk around the school compound because nobody is going to get my trust to tell me you didn't do this correctly or you need to try this again. Nope, I'm not taking that risk. Not happening. Students with a history of trauma, they have trouble reading facial expressions, body language. They're often what we call misattributions, where there might be some kind of movement, some kind of facial expression, and they just get it completely wrong. Not because they want to, but that's how the traumatized brain works. I'm always looking for threat. Where is the threat? Where is the threat? Oh, you just move your hand too quickly. Oh, no. It could mean that you're trying to get me. I'm not done with that. I'm going to react. And we see that over and over, and we get in a cycle with that. Our students with trauma, they don't have the best insight into relationships. Their interpersonal functioning, a lot of times, is very, very compromised. Why? Because they don't have that trust and that nurturing bond and that secure attachment, whether at home or in other places. So they struggle. They struggle to relate to other people. They struggle to know how their behavior affects other people. That goes back to cause and effect too. If I throw my knapsack at this other one and it hits him in the head, oh, I was just joking, it was funny. Well, now the child probably doesn't like it, but they're not thinking through all of that. And this is why, going back to the cause and effect, this is why traditional methods of discipline don't work with students with trauma. Think about it. If we're talking about traditional methods now, we're talking, okay, if you do X, then you serve a detention. If you do Y, then you're going to stay home for a couple of days. All of that involves planning and thinking ahead. If I do this thing, it means I'm going to have to stay after school tomorrow. No, I'm not thinking that far ahead. I'm thinking minute to minute, so I'm doing what I'm doing with no consideration of this detention, exclusion, whatever. And this is how we end up in a situation where you punish, and they keep doing the same thing. You say, how are we still here? We've excluded you for 15 days, and you're doing the same thing. It's because the traumatized brain does not learn that way. Cannot. Cause and effect, not happening. Planning and sequencing, seeing things ahead, not happening. We have to use a different approach. Must use a different approach. This is where we run into a little bit of a problem because culturally, that's not really how we typically approach discipline. So we might have to rethink things, and it's going to involve a lot of cultural change is hard, and it takes place over generations. But I can see the shift. I first came to Cayman in 2013, and I can see things moving. So it means things are moving, we just need to keep going. Didn't I show this already? Yes, I did. But there's a reason I brought it back again. I'm going back to the relationships again. The relationship, that's the pivot, that's the fulcrum. If that child does not have a relationship with the teacher, some supportive adult in the school, somebody, it could be the security, I don't care who it is, child needs to have a supportive relationship, a trusting relationship. One person. It could just be one person, and that can make a world of difference, right? If that person can help that student to regulate, to stay calm, to get back to a place where they can listen and reason, that's going to be a massive help for the child and the school. Remember, we said once we're in alarm, fear, terror, front of the brain, not accessing learning. We're functioning in a more kind of reflexive, primitive way. Now, I'm going to call your attention to this here. The window of tolerance. What is that? Essentially, that concept is looking at how a person is regulated or dysregulated and what that can look like. Remember now, we said some children who are traumatized can be withdrawn, low energy, numb, zoned out, looking like they're lacking motivation. Those students are the ones that are in hypoarousal. Hypo, low. Too low, right? Then we have our students who are in hyperarousal, too high. Those are the ones now agitated, quarreling, aggressive. Those ones are up in hyperarousal. But there's something called the window of tolerance, right? That's sort of your optimal functioning in terms of regulation. That's the window in which you can reach the student, they can access what they need in terms of their brain function to learn. For some students, that window of tolerance is about this. It's almost non-existent. The window you have to work with to keep that child regulated, you are working hard all day to keep that child together. The goal is, with interventions, with the support in schools, hopefully at home too, we widen the window of tolerance. So over time, we build resilience, the child can tolerate taking risks, they're able to trust a little bit more, and you try to widen it over time. That's a task, but it can happen. When the child is in that window of tolerance, they're able to engage, they can be playful, they can be present, they can be flexible, they can take feedback. A lot can happen in that window. Time's up. No. A lot can happen in that window. This is not about behavior modification. That's not what this is about. This is about healing and helping to support children through trauma. So very quickly now, to help a vulnerable child learn, we can't just go straight to the thinking part of the brain. We know that doesn't work. So where do we need to start? Regulate. We help the child to regulate. What does that look like? Well, it depends on what's happening with the child when they're dysregulated. If we have a child who is really up, really aggressive, really agitated, maybe physical proximity, you start there. Not physical touch, because that could get things, even more complicated. But just being present, make eye contact, reassure the child, I'm here, I see you, I see you're having a hard time. Validate feelings. That can get you a far way. Eventually, we see things start to come down, right? And then you're able to relate to the child because they're regulated enough that they can listen. And then that's when we show empathy. I understand. This is difficult. I'm seeing what's happening. I wonder if this is what was happening, why you got so upset. Maybe we don't even need to do a whole lot of talking. That's possible too. Sometimes too many words, that's just too much to process. You know the child, you work with them. And then finally, when you can relate, then you can get to the thinking brain, and that is when we're doing reasoning, problem solving, and so on. I know it says my time is up, but I'm going to give you one very quick example. There's a student, this happened just earlier this week. This is a child we've been working with for a long time, a solid 2 years of intensive intervention. Child burst into my office, Miss, I'm not going back to English class. Oh dear. Okay, what's happening? No, miss, I'm not going because teacher shouted at me. Okay, why did the teacher shout at you? Because I didn't understand. I'm not sure a teacher is going to shout at you because you didn't understand. There's something I'm missing here. Tell me what happened when you feel like the teacher shouted at you. I didn't understand. Okay, and what did you do? Oh, I threw down the book. Oh, well, maybe teacher was frustrated. You threw the book. That probably disrupted the class. Yes, miss. Okay. So if you need help, if you don't understand, what do you do? Miss, I not going to make them think I don't know. I not going to make them think I'm stupid. Oh, okay. So what we're seeing now, he doesn't have that trust with the teacher to say, I'm going to make myself vulnerable and let you know I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing. So what am I going to do instead? I'll throw the furniture, because then I can leave. And they'll send me to Dr. Stephanie, and it's fine. Good. No, not good. So I said to him, all right, what can we do instead? How about if the teacher gives you a signal? And he says, like this, something like this. Oh, could be. And he says, yeah. So that removes the shame, that removes this feeling of, oh, everybody in the class is going to think I'm stupid. And it can get him relating to the teacher in a sort of, oh, we have our secret code kind of thing. So that will, again, build trust. What can we do? Nope. Safety, physical safety, psychological safety, very, very important. Those relationships, exceptionally important. And then we continue to support social skills and self-regulation. So, of course, Zippy, Apple, Passport. Now we have Spark Resilience, we have Sunshine Circles, and we are incredibly grateful to Alex Panton Foundation for the support over the last several years with emotional literacy programs, with all these interventions. We've trained so many teachers, and there are many, many kids that are benefiting from that. And I'm going to close with a message from some very, very special children and young people. I've stood here for the last, obviously, more than 25 minutes. Oops. But I think they will drive home the message probably more effectively than I could.
I am rude so that I can let out my pent-up emotions that I struggle to identify.
I'm rude because you've done something nice with me or for me, and I want to remind you I'm bad. I don't believe I deserve nice things, so I sabotage everything.
I'm rude because it gets me attention, even if it's negative attention.
I am rude because I want to get the same response from you that I got in my family. It feels comfortable when you behave in a way that I expect, even though it's not good for me. It just proves that I'm right and all adults are the same.
I am rude because I know it upsets you.
I'm rude because I'm perceiving a threat where there is none.
I'm rude because I have heightened levels of cortisol in my body, which pushes me into fight, flight, or freeze.
I am rude because I'm tired, hungry, or just need a hug. I am rude because I can't think before I behave a certain way or say the wrong thing.
I'm rude because you got too close and I'm scared of attachment. I am rude to push you away, and I reject you before you reject me.
I am rude because people speak to me that way and I'm used to it.
I am rude because that's the label I've been given by everyone, so I might as well live up to it.
Finally, I am rude mostly because I'm scared. I am not aware on why I behave this way, but you know it now, so please help me to feel safe.
Thank you very much.